Alright guys, the time is now for a showdown between the Beastmen, who are going to be led by Malagor the Dark Peacock, and the High Elves, who are going to be led by the Crazy Pigeon Lady. So without further ado, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So as far as the build goes, we do have a fairly mobile force. So in total, we do have 3 groups of the Centaurs with throwing axes, which are really good against High Elves. They can kite down Dragon Princes if they have Star Dragons or any sort of single entity monsters. The Centaurs with throwing axes are very good at kiting them and picking them apart. But more importantly, I really like to use them against heavy cav. So if they're Silver Helms and Dragon Princes, these guys are able to kite them with their 95 speed, and they have really good armor piercing on their missiles here. It looks like 22 of the 32 is going to be armor piercing. So definitely a very solid unit. I think Centaurs are probably one of the best units on the Beastmen roster, including all 3 variants. So yeah, I always recommend bringing a couple depending on the matchup. So 3 groups of Centaurs with throwing axes. We do also have 2 groups of standard Centaurs. So these guys are going to be the spear and shield. I think they're using spears. Yeah, it looks like they have spears and like bucklers. I would hesitate to call that a shield, but it looks like the spear and buckler variant. And they're pretty good against Illyrian Reaver Archers. So Reaver Archers are a pretty popular pick here. They have missile attacks, they're good at punishing Cygors, and honestly, they're pretty good against Centaurs. I mean, Illyrian Reaver Archers are just such a damn good unit. And I figured the Centaurs, they have the shields, they have okay combat stats, and a really good charge bonus, and when teamed up with Chaos Poison Warhounds, they can definitely do a pretty good job against those bad boys. So that's going to be this force over here. On the far side, I have the same thing for the most part, Centaurs, and then some more Hounds. And for our main core, we just have Goreherds with shields. Goreherds are pretty good against Spearmen. They have the shield, so they can take Reaver Fire and Archer Fire pretty efficiently. And on top of that, they do have pretty good combat stats. You can see it's going to be 32, 36, and 30. So yeah, they can definitely trade efficiently with Spearmen. And I'm pretty sure they win in like a really long, grindy fight. In the back, we do have the Butchers of Kalkan. I really like these guys quite a bit. Firstly, they have silver shields. High Elves, of course, usually bring a lot of missiles, so the shields are going to be quite helpful. And more importantly, they're fast, they hit hard, very good against the heavy cav. Now, you don't want them fighting alone because they do have, 45 armor, which makes them a little bit squishy against, things like Dragon Princes. But nonetheless, these guys are really good at dragging down heavy cav, and they regenerate. You don't have to babysit them. They're just a very, very good unit. And for our leadership, we do have Malagor. Malagor is going to be summoning Cygors, pretty basic stuff. I think Cygors are very, very good against the High Elves. We're not going to be going too crazy in the sense that I'm not going to be bringing like 2 or 3 Cygors and making my entire build around it on top of the summons. But we will have the Eye of Morsleep, which is a very powerful unit. The Warp Gaze helps protect it against cav charges and dragons and things like that. And also Malagor will be summoning 1 more Cygor. So we'll probably have like 2 on the battlefield at a time. That's pretty much it for my force. For my opponent, he does have some sneaky business going on. So he's got Silver Helms here, 2 groups of Silver Helms, and are they the shielded variant? It looks like they are not, so they're just going to be the standard variant of those guys. The Fireborn here, definitely pretty damn scary if they're able to get their paws on my Centaurs or my Minotaurs or the Cygor. That's going to be very devastating, but we should be able to throw boulders at them and wear them down, hopefully. Another group of Dragon Princes, and then he also has 2 groups of Reaver Archers. I think Reaver Archers? No, one of them is actually going to be standard Reavers. So standard Reavers, 35, 40, well, he actually has Silver Chevron, so on top of that 27 weapon strength, they'll definitely be able to handle Centaurs. But hopefully our numbers will kind of play into this game a little bit. And for his leadership, he does, of course, have the Pigeon Lady, by far the most competitive pick. Arcana and Forging, she has Earthblood. Although, arguably, Tyrion's pretty good in this matchup. Tyrion's really a bully. He can, like, chase down Malagor and just, like, spank him incredibly hard. So there is some give and take there. But Alarielle with her heals, I think if you're going to be going with Dragon Princes and Fireborn and Silver Helms, and a lot of these units that are very dependent on healing, I think she's kind of a must pick. So we're going to be falling back a little bit here. I think we did see the Fireborn coming, but I didn't see all these other troops. I'm not aware of the Reaver Archers too much, although maybe they got a little bit of missile pressure and I did notice. I can't quite remember. In the meantime, my opponent does have a line of Spearmen and also 2 Bolt Throwers that we forgot to talk about. They're going to be pretty good against my throwing axes. If you just kind of sit some on the throwing axes or maybe move some up to hit the Cygor. Now, the Cygor has 400 range against the, I'm pretty sure it's like much less on these ballistic. Yeah, it's not much less, it's 380. So over here, I do discover a bit of an ambush at the last second, so you can see I'm going to be pulling back just like a moment before they catch me. But one of the Hounds, for some reason, I don't know, they like re-engaged there for a second. Maybe I made a bit of a misclick or something, but I do get away for the most part. I will be losing some Hounds, but at least we kept the Centaurs alive. In the main pocket, the Fireborn are going to be charging in, and again, a little bit of sloppy play. I thought my infantry were a little bit farther ahead, so I do take a little bit of damage, and you can see that stupid Eye of Morsleep throwing boulders into my own troops. I do take a little bit of damage there, but it kind of works out in my favor, actually, because he charges into the infantry and the Goreherds, and the Butchers of Kalkan are saturated with chaff, so this is going to be a good engagement. Butchers are going to start spanking them with their battle axes, and now my Centaurs are in a healthy position, and I can just throw axes and boulders, but again, a very, very good healing spell there from my opponent. You can see the Heart of Averlon is going to be going down. Getting that fat healing, which really saves quite a bit of damage, but the Fireborn lose almost half their health and a lot of their models, so that's definitely a very good initial engagement here. I also did detach some of my Ungors here to kind of block up the skirmish force, so they had Reavers, and it looks like my opponent attempted a bit of an alpha strike, so he just charged in with the Reavers as well as the standard Reavers and the melee ones, figuring he could maybe punish these guys, a little bit quicker, but the Goreherds are surprisingly resilient with 35 melee defense, and that's going to allow me to get a fat counter charge with my Centaurs right here, as well as the Poison Hound, so we should be able to win this engagement, I'm thinking. So in the meantime, we do force back the Fireborn, which was great. The other Dragon Princes didn't take much damage, and over here we have a pretty messy fight as well. So I did commit to a fight because I had the Goreherd support. He committed to the fight as well with his Silver Helms, charged my Centaurs. Obviously, I'm going to take a bit of a beating there because Centaurs, they're not the great weapon variant, but I figured that the infantry and Malagor is also fighting over here. And Malagor in the most recent patch did get buffed to his combat stat, so he's a little bit stronger. So we're going to be fighting there, a little bit grindy, but it should be good to get rid of their martial prowess. Now, if you take a big old look at the battlefield, I have Morsleep's in pretty good shape. Centaurs, the throwing axes are kind of just reaving and roaming about, and now this is good because I can roam over here and start getting some throwing axe fire on these Silver Helms. So we're going to start wearing them down. And in the meantime, the Eye of Morsleep is just kind of working on these these Fireborn right here. I do, of course, have a second Cygor, which was just summoned before this engagement right here. And it looks like the Silver Helms and company are just trying to push through to get on my Centaurs, which isn't a bad choice because they are tearing them apart. Fireborn are going to keep pushing through. It looks like he might peel off some of his forces here to go after the Cygor. For the most part, the Pigeon Lady is going to be hunting the Centaur. So 95 speed against our 110, but she's going to have to land to get them, so it's going to be really hard for her to actually catch those guys. So the Fireborn are going to be piling in to go after the Cygor right here. They're going to be getting a big old charge, and I do have some spears, so I had some Ungor spears nearby. They're not going to be braced, unfortunately. I didn't really have a choice in that matter, because I did have to rush over to kind of protect the Cygor. But still, we're going to kind of muck this up. And the Cygor has pretty good melee combat stats. I mean, 44 melee attack and a fat boulder should be enough to kind of work down these Fireborn with the support of the spear. So this situation is actually really good. In the meantime, you can see Ilaria the Radiant is being kited and just kind of poked with axes. She's definitely not going to get too much value on those guys. And in the back, this engagement went really well over here. The one you guys saw earlier, the Centaurs, as well as the Poison Hounds and the Goreherds fought to the bitter end. We were actually able to break all three rivers and push them back into the forest here. And as far as this fight goes, you can see the Minotaurs, the Butchers of Kalkan, a very good choice against heavy cap. I mean, these bad boys right now have 63 speed against the 66, or actually 78 of Dragon Princes. Man, they're fast for heavy cap. But still, they're pretty quick. They can almost keep up with them, and they hit really, really hard. So we're able to break those Dragon Princes who are not the Fireborn. And the Fireborn are going to meet their end at the tips of these Ungor spears, which is great. The Chaos Peacock is doing some work, and the Cygor, of course, dropping some hot rock fire on those guys. And it looks like the Fireborn are going to be broken off. Granted, they'll most likely come back here in a moment. In the back line, you can see that the other Dragon Princes and Silver Helms are kind of chasing around the backfield, trying to catch the Centaurs with throwing axes. But this is the game you really want to force your opponent into. You want them to have to chase you. There goes the Warp Gaze as well. So the Eye of Morsleep can, of course, lock things in place. And yeah, these guys are definitely having a really, really bad time right now. They're taking throwing axes, they're taking boulders. Looks like the Fireborn are going to be rallying and coming back up here, maybe going after the Centaurs, so they'll probably detach and go after the Eye of Morsleep in a moment. Over here in the main fight, his lines have kind of faltered a little bit. The Spearmen obviously can't keep up with the sheer numbers. I have Minotaurs running around, I have Goreherds, all kinds of stuff. And it looks like the Reaper Bolthors are a little bit unprotected in some areas. In the forest, you can see these Centaurs, as well as the Poison Hounds, were able to chase off the remaining Reavers, and I think some of them actually maybe fought to the death here, but for the most part, they have been flushed off the map, which is going to be incredibly useful. So if we take a big old juicy look at the battlefield, you can see the Goreherds are fighting some spears down here. The spears should be able to finish them off, but the Reaper Bolthors are just out of position at this point. I think they were targeting the Eye of Morsleep, which I was pulling back, so it kind of pulled them out of position a little bit. And yeah, these Minotaurs are pissed off. Oh man, I've never actually looked close at their shields. Look at that. They have an actual... What is that, a skeleton of? It must be someone from the Empire, but it looks like a little big to be like a human skeleton. I don't know. Yeah, crazy stuff. Anyways, the Minotaurs here are going to be spanking the remainders of these Eagle Claw Bolthor crews. They got their shields. They did take some damage over the course of the battle. But what's so good about the Butchers of Kalkan is the fact that they do regenerate. So I think they're definitely a very, very solid pick in this matchup. Granted, I mean, a lot of high elf players are just going to spam Reaver Archers, not Reaver Archers, but Lothern Seaguard and Archers in general, and it can be pretty tough for the Minotaurs to shine, but ideally, kind of the tactic against that is you use these Cygors to pull them out of position, right? So then their army has to move forward, you're bombing their Archers, and then once they're on the move and they're being harassed by Hounds and Centaurs and different things like that, it really changes the dynamic of that defensive posture. Over here, you can see the Silver Helms are going to be fighting the Centaurs, the throwing axes. For the most part, we should be able to clean them up with our superior numbers here. Going to be charging into melee with those in a moment. And the Eye of Morsleep is going to be marching forward. There's just some high elf spearmen and archers and some other chaff over there in the distance. And in the back, the Pigeon Lady has been trying her hardest to catch these Centaurs, but we've been kiting them into another realm of existence here as these Fireborn are just being taken the axes to the face. And I think at the end here, I'm just like, I'm just going to engage and see if we can kind of break them to army losses. In a moment, we'll be grabbing Malagor the Dark Omen and simply summoning our last Cygor. So we kind of held on to that in the back pocket. And that's going to probably trigger my opponent to army losses because, all he really has left are the Spearmen and some tattered troops. So well played. It was definitely a fun game. I think the Lothern Seaguard style of play and using a Star Dragon and different things like that is a little bit more efficient. Granted, I like the direction the build was going in general. The Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers are pretty good answers against Cygors. They can put on steady pressure. Although it seemed that they never really got to kind of generate their value. Maybe that's because of the pressure we put on the back line with the Centaurs and our Goreherds and things like that. Reaver Archers and Reavers are also a very good choice. Those guys are pretty good counters against Centaurs. But again, it was kind of a numbers game, right? He had 3 of those guys and we had this and Poison Hounds and just so much pressure coming in. And that constant kind of weight of the Eye of Morsleep and Cygors just bombing your expensive Dragon Princes. Like every time one of those boulders gets like a direct hit on your Fireborn, you can just like literally feel the bounce of power shifting in your opponent's favor. It is such a powerful pick. Granted, he brought a couple answers, but it just didn't seem like they fully got online. And I think if memory serves, I'm pretty sure I kept like scooting it back, trying to keep it out of the 380 range because I had the 400 range advantage. So then that moved them forward, which kind of put them in a dangerous position against my infantry. And I think that's ultimately what ended up happening. So yeah, definitely very fun stuff. I love the Beastmen quite a bit. I think it's a decent build. Now, I really have to try this out against like the Archer builds, the ones that use a lot of Lothran Seaguard, because Lothran Seaguard just counter Centaur so hard. You can't even really charge them that effectively because Lothran Seaguard have a charge defense at anti-large and have, halberds and, well, not halberds, spears and really high melee defense. So I feel like Lothran Seaguard spam would be really tough for this build to handle. Granted, I think summoning the Cygors is the first step, and maybe harassing with the Hounds is really important and just cycle charging, even if just to temporarily shut them down while Cygors are hitting them. But definitely something I have to try out. I feel like if there was a dragon as well, so if they went with Lothran Seaguard and dragons, I at the very least do have the Warp Gaze to lock it in place, and then also have the Centaurs with throwing axes to kind of poke it, but it's hard to say. I guess it depends on the map and the initial engagements, and there's so many other variables. So anyways, very well played in my opponent. Looks like Merarche, so look forward to running into you again on ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this Beastmen vs. High Elf showdown. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.